Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Policy in Practice's second webinar of September. Today, we're going to be talking about how data has made London's pensioners better off by £8 million. And it's great to have you on the call today. Thank you very much for joining us. As is the way with all of our webinars, just while we get started and feet under the table, I'd just like to do a little bit of housekeeping and introduce you to the panel on the right-hand side in case you've not been on one of our webinars before. So on that panel, you should see where you can raise your digital hand. So if you could do that, please, by way of an audio check, just to let me know that you can hear me. Thank you very much. Also in that same panel, you should see the place where you'll be able to ask questions throughout the webinar, and I do encourage you to do that. We'll have plenty of time during the webinar for the questions at the end. We have a poll today, which we'll get to shortly, and also in this panel, you will see the chance to download a couple of handouts, it's called, not download, sorry. So there's two handouts there in the panel. One is our policy analysis report on the £90 billion of unclaimed support. So I do encourage you to take a look at that if you've not already seen it. And there's also our product brochure as well. If you're interested, it's got information about the products and some case studies in there as well. We'll have a short survey at the end of the webinar, so do please stick around for that and give us your feedback. And we aim to have you on your way by 11:45 this morning. As always, the way the slides and the recording will automatically follow to you, so no need to take copious notes. And if you're on Twitter, please do give us a follow. We are policy_practice, and we'll give you a follow back. So fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. Just a little bit about Policy in Practice, who we are, before we get into the content of today's webinar. So we're an organisation that believes in the power of data and technology to change lives. And how do we do that? Well, we have a number of different services and solutions, and also our policy knowledge. We're baked in with our policy knowledge, a team of professionals with extensive knowledge of the welfare system, and I'm sure, like you, we're passionate about making social policy work. The latest that you might have seen of our policy knowledge, you might have heard Devon Galani, our founder, talking on BBC Radio 4's Money Box programme recently on Saturday, a couple of weeks ago, and he was interviewed by Paul Lewis, and he was talking about this particular project that we're going to be covering today. So you might have heard of us from being in the media. We help over 100 local authorities to use their data to understand poverty and vulnerability and to do something about it. And our benefit calculator is one of the 3 recommended by government. You can find us on gov.uk, and we help over 10,000 people every day to increase their income by identifying, claiming the support they're eligible for. So that's a little bit about us. I'm going to put the link to the Money Box programme in the chat as well shortly, because I think you might find that interesting if you didn't listen at the time. So moving on then to our agenda and what we're going to be covering today. I'm delighted to be able to bring this project to you. It's just fantastic. We're so thrilled with everything to do with it at Policy in Practice. And my colleague Abby is going to introduce the project and talk about the context, basically how unclaimed benefits, how much is unclaimed nationwide and also in the capital as well. And then I'm really delighted to introduce you to Adrian McDowell from the Greater London Authority, who's going to talk about the work that the Mayor's Office is doing to tackle poverty in London. Then we're going to talk specifically about the campaign and how data was key to the impacts that were achieved. And we'll have a deep dive into one of the participating London boroughs, Lambeth Council. And we will be looking at the activity and results that were carried out in Lambeth as well. Abby's going to take us through all of the campaign results and crucially talk about the next steps for the campaign as well. And as I said, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. So lots to get through, and I hope you're in the right place and you're excited as I am to hear what we've got to talk about today. So before we get into the content with Abby, if I could introduce you to our speakers. And ask our speakers to turn cameras and mics on so we can all say hello to our audience. If you wouldn't mind, Adrian, Abby and Laura coming shortly, no doubt. So Adrian, very welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on the webinar. It's great to see you. Would you like to say hello?
Morning, everyone. Yes, thanks, Janet. My name's Adrian. I work at the Greater London Authority, so that's the Mayor of London.
Brilliant, thank you. And Abby, if you want to, are you there, Abby?
Yeah, hi, I'm here. Can you see me, Janet?
I can now, sorry, yes, thank you.
Perfect. Hi everyone, I'm Abby. I'm a Client Services Manager at Policy and Practice. I mostly work with our London local authorities, helping them to use our low income family tracker and their benefits administration data in the best way. I also led on a lot of this project as well, so really happy to be here to share what we did and the results of these campaigns and what we're planning on doing going forward.
Lovely, thanks Abby. And Laura?
Hi all, I'm Laura Stoker. I'm the Programme Lead on the Cost of Living at Lambeth Council.
Brilliant. Lovely, thanks everybody, and more from our speakers very shortly. So without further ado, let me hand over to Abby. Thanks, Abby.
Thanks so much, Janet. So yeah, as Janet mentioned before, we do a lot of analysis within this space. We work with a lot of local authorities who are looking at how to close the gap between what people are eligible for and not claiming. So we published this report earlier this year, which found that £19 billion of benefits and other support is unclaimed every year. That's obviously a huge number and a load of benefits that people are missing out on. And that ranges from universal credit, which we estimate at £7.5 billion by 1.2 million households. There's also council tax support, which is the most underclaimed local government benefit in England. We're seeing also social tariffs being highly missed out on, and then, like we're here to talk to you about today, pension credit, a historically really underclaimed benefit across the UK. You can read this report, it's out on our website. There's also a link at the bottom there to identify, have a look at what support is unclaimed across the UK every year. This is why we work with so many different organisations to help to close this gap and ensure that people are claiming what they're eligible for, and we'll touch on that today. And a bit more detail about kind of the impact of this going further than just the amount that people can claim. There's a far wider impact than just the economic impact. So breaking this down into what is unclaimed in London, there's £2.6 billion of support unclaimed in London every year. So 4 million claims are being missed by 370,000 people. So this is what unclaimed support is worth in the context of that £19 billion. This is what it's worth in London, and it really sets up well, I think, the context of what we're trying to do today. And while we're here to talk about pension credit and the pension credit campaign that we did, it's obviously a historically underclaimed benefit, as I was saying before. There's so much more that goes unclaimed and much more that data can do to help local authorities and their partners within other benefits as well. So we've estimated the unclaimed support across different local authorities in different regions, and that's what you're seeing on the screen here is the value of this unclaimed support. So this 2.6 billion broken down by type across London. So obviously universal credit there showing as the highest amount underclaimed. And then we have council tax support, child benefit and pension credit. So pension credit itself is worth almost 228 million. There's unclaimed by over 110,000 households. So when you think about that in the context of the cost of living crisis, when you think about that in the context of coming up to the winter months, which we kicked off this project during the winter of last year, thinking about people having to choose between putting their heating on or feeding their families, feeding themselves. So yeah, seeing this amount of underclaimed benefit is obviously very key to a lot of the work that we do, working with local authorities and other organisations. And we're really keen to support wherever we can using data to drive take up of these benefits across the UK. The next slide, I think we have a poll where we're interested to hear what you have done in your area to encourage benefit take up. So I'll quickly pass back to Janet.
Great, thanks Abby. So bear with while I get the technology sorted. So there we go. Hopefully, thanks Abby, hopefully you can see this on your screen now. So what we're interested in is of everybody, all the different types of organisations on the call this morning, what have you done in your area to encourage benefit take up? As with all of our polls, there's going to be some overlap, no doubt. But please just choose the one which is sort of most prevalent to you. So the options that we've provided are: have you provided a benefit calculator on your website, so like a kind of a reactive, is that the primary thing that you've done? Or have you run a sort of a blanket awareness campaign, a general awareness campaign? So for example, done work in the press or on bus shelters or on radio, so something that's not targeted. Have you sent targeted letters to people using data, as we're talking about with the campaign today? Have you outsourced this support to a third-party partner, so for example a local citizens advice, or are you yet to get started? You've done none of the above, and you're looking for inspiration and ideas today, in which case you've come to the right place. So brilliant, thank you everybody. There's just a little bit long I'm going to leave for people to vote, and we've got some interesting results coming in. Then I'm going to close the poll and share with Abby, share the results on the screen and ask Abby to give a comment. Great, thanks everybody. I think most people have voted, so let me do as I promised and share the results. Abby, can you see those results there?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I think that's really interesting and quite interesting to see a split between people running targeted campaigns and running kind of more general awareness campaigns. And I can share a bit more detail a bit later on how local authorities can use Lift to run more targeted campaigns that help to identify those people who we know are eligible for certain benefits, in this case pension credit, and not claiming it. But I think also seeing 40% of people on the call today providing a benefit calculator on their website for residents to look at, I think that's really interesting, and obviously helps to helps people to identify the support that they're eligible for. And I know from working with some local authorities and other partners who use the Better Off calculator, how valuable this support can be just for allowing residents and helping residents to identify support that they're eligible for. And I know that's something that the GLA are doing as well. So yeah, I think I'm passing over to Adrian now, so it'd be interesting to hear his take on this as well.
Yeah, Adrian, do you want to come in and just while the poll results are still on the screen and comment at all on those results?
Yes, well, I agree with Abby's first impression of them, between that balance between like targeted and the general awareness campaign, and the calculator as well. Here at the GLA, we've kind of done all of those things, and I imagine there's others on the call who've done all of them as well, and how there is a role for each one of these in terms of general awareness raising, particularly in terms of like offline and things like that, but that's obviously hard to measure and hard to know like what impact you're having, but it does play a role. And then complementing that with, when you can and when you have the data, and we'll obviously talking more about that today, the targeted letter approach as well, which you can measure the impact of and see the results more clearly in terms of your activity, which is obviously much more satisfying and a much kind of better way to work. But we definitely see a role for all of these things, and how the data-led approach is really important and something we'd like kind of everyone to be doing, but how it's not going to reach everyone, and there needs to be kind of a suite of options for people in terms of uptake work.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Adrian. Let me hide those results and hand over directly to you, Adrian, for your slides. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's a view of City Hall, for those of you who don't know what City Hall looks like in London. It's moved now. Used to be near Tower Bridge. Now we're near City Airport in East London. So that's a side view. Thanks. Thanks, Janet. So phase one. So I'm going to talk about really where this came from the GLA's perspective, and what the rationale for it was. So as Abby explained, with that 19 billion figure that Policy and Practice identified, in London, that number translates to 240 million or thereabouts in terms of unclaimed pension credit. And as Abby also said, that's kind of been a historic issue in terms of pension credit and claims, and that number hasn't really budged at the national level or really at the regional level in London for quite a while, about a third of older households missing out on that. So really keen to do something about that, particularly during the cost of living crisis. This seems obvious, but an important rationale for us was that pension credit is aimed at some of the Londoners living on the lowest incomes and has a significant financial benefit to them in terms of the actual amount from pension credit and also passported benefits as well. I think you'll have seen the average claims in London were just shy of £4,000, which is obviously significant amounts of money in terms of the type of benefit it is. There's also the point with pension credit. You often hear Martin Lewis say £1 of pension credit is worth claiming, and that's because it's a passported benefit. So there are those wider benefits associated with it. For example, housing benefit, if you're a renter, NHS dental care, etc. Some council tax support as well. And last year in this financial year, of course, it's also related to the cost of living payments, those £900 payments. So that was also an important reason why we wanted to focus on pension credit. So we have Lambeth here today, which is really good, and we're kind of a leader on this campaign. But historically, Islington Council have worked with policy and practice to take this data-led approach. And so from a London regional government perspective, obviously we're looking for things that we can scale across the capital with boroughs. And so having something that a council had done and other boroughs could replicate and scale up was really important, and another reason for doing this. Going into this, as Abby said, this time last year, there was strong interest from boroughs around this within the kind of political situation of cost of living, but also wanting to take a more targeted approach and get the most out of the Lift dashboard, which many boroughs, not all boroughs, but many boroughs in London use. Also, I've spoken about how it was scalable. From our perspective, we also wanted to do something in a short time frame. So working with policy and practice who have these relationships with boroughs who are keen, working on something that had been trialled in Islington and had that history was really important for us for doing something in really just a few months and getting money into the pockets of Londoners. There's also been at the GLA under different administrations a history of pension credit campaigns in London. Those vary from targeted to more general campaigns, and so it's something we wanted to build off from that as well. So that's sort of our rationale for phase one. Thanks. So in terms of delivery, as Abby said, this campaign was pretty much live. I think some boroughs something in December, but really from the start of this calendar year for about 4 months. So older people across the boroughs received 2 letters with about a 4-6 week gap between them, encouraging them to claim for pension credit. And really the messaging was that older households have been identified as eligible. So that was that really targeted approach there. So not saying look into pension credit, it was identifying what those households had been identified. Policy and practice provided a managed service to boroughs, which I think is important to note. So we're really working with the data, getting the letters ready, etc. Boroughs really only had to sign off the letter, and it was sent on behalf of boroughs. So that's important to note, but policy and practice were really leading that in phase one of delivery. So I've said the letters were sent by boroughs, and there were also tailored local messages, for example, around other wider cost of living support as it's older people, also things relating to winter health, things like that. So there's the primary objective about pension credit, but as you're communicating with residents, you obviously don't want to miss those opportunities. So that was also an important part of the campaign. We had, in terms of the GLA, like funding this project, working with boroughs, really positive feedback from boroughs, working with policy and practice, and also the impact of the campaign. That was pretty universal. There were more issues. This is more for policy and practice, but there were more issues in terms of managing the accounts, some issues around data quality and boroughs wanting to customise letters more so than we expected. So that's just something worth considering if you're thinking about running a campaign like this, bearing those factors in mind. Another key part of this, which is such a good way of working with this targeted data-led approach, is that through Lift, we could see live data on successful campaigns, as successful claims, as the campaign was live, which was really important to see its success, and good to see that DWP were also processing the claims, because that was also a bit of an issue going into this, but didn't seem to be, fortunately, for this. So that was just a really great way of working, and not something you can always replicate, particularly around the more generalized work, particularly around live data and knowing that you're having impact as you're doing it. So I can talk more openly now, which is really good, about phase 2. So we do want to do this again with boroughs this autumn, winter, but in terms of like just thinking a bit more about strategically, I guess, in terms of borough capacity and all of that, alongside obviously helping older Londoners claim pension credit, we've got a kind of mixture of objectives. So firstly, obviously we just want older people to claim pension credit and be in a better financial position. So that, of course, is the primary objective. But working with policy and practice, we're hoping to kind of change the process a bit so that councils can own, run, manage and report on the campaigns themselves, so that in future there's that kind of way of working and that infrastructure, I guess, for boroughs to work more independently. As I said, in phase 1, policy and practice really delivered and managed that service. And as like a regional authority, we want to be creating the conditions for boroughs to be able to do this themselves, when maybe in future, funding from us and other things isn't there, or has changed in some ways. There's also the opportunity with a longer time frame to kind of look at best practice from phase 1 of the campaign, and for boroughs to collaborate more in that way. So that will be a good way of working in phase 2 this autumn, winter. In terms of how we're doing this, so there'll be focus on integration between Lift and the mailing services that are used for sending out the letters. So that's one important way. And also things around just making the process more straightforward. So a standard letter template for boroughs to use, which they can customize obviously for local comms, but within a standard template is going to make that a lot easier. So next slide, thank you. So in terms of the rationale, maybe I could have changed those slides around, but in terms of why we're doing phase 2 and why we see there being more opportunity to do this, there's evidence from Islington, as well as other places outside of London, that repeat campaigns for pension credit do work and can have really strong results. Of course, there are some older households who claimed in phase 1, but there will be more older households coming on board who receive letters in phase 2, who of course didn't receive letters the first time. Also, in terms of behaviour, some older households it will take time to want to do this or prioritize doing this. So a third or fourth letter does seem to make a difference, and you can still get really strong results from repeat campaigns. As I said, we want to create a process where boroughs take more of the lead on the campaign, use different messaging services as well. That's a bit more technical, but the options there. Work more closely with partners. So we worked with Age UK London and Independent Age the first time, but we see opportunity to work even more closely with them on phase 2. From a GLA perspective, we of course want to work across all of London with boroughs, so we're looking to work with even more. 17 took part in phase 1. Some boroughs do stuff independently, so we want to give them credit as well, but 17 took part in phase 1. With phase 2, we want to be working with over 20, 23, maybe even 25, and that's looking like that will happen. Also, final 3 points here, we think there's opportunity to maybe better coordinate some of the advice offer at the local level or through what the GLA is funding to support older people with a claim, those who need it, or need it the most, I should say. So there's opportunity there. Also looking at different approaches in terms of messaging. So we might be partnering up with an organisation trialling different messaging in the letters around factors which can encourage or put older people off claiming. So stigma, complexity, it just not being a priority, and trialling that across the boroughs in phase 2 will be really interesting, and doing it at the scale that will really check out in terms of how we're doing that. And then finally, of course, going into winter, we can combine this with other cost of living activity and uptake work that's going on at the local level, regional or national level as well. So there's an opportunity there to communicate other things within the letters, as well as encouraging older people to claim. So I will end there, I think, but just to say that we're really pleased about how it worked, working with so many boroughs, and that so many boroughs want to take part in phase 2.
Thanks very much, Adrian. Let me hand over to Abby. Thanks, Abby.
Thanks.
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, it's great to hear about kind of all of the different reasons why we run these campaigns, and to have that emphasis on the reason that we're doing phase 2 as well, and other things that we want to look at within phase 2, kind of improving and building up the capacity to run these campaigns, and also looking at kind of, I guess, the wider reasons that we're running these campaigns to improve partnerships between other agencies that we can work with as a part of these campaigns as well. So yeah, that's really excellent. I wanted to give a bit more detail in this section about how we did this campaign. I think we've given a lot of information about why we do this campaign, and I guess the impetus behind it, and we spoke about other local authorities who have run these campaigns previously. So Adrian mentioned Islington, obviously Lambeth, who are coming on to talk a little bit later, have run campaigns similar to this, and other campaigns using their data. But I think it'd be a bit remiss to not talk about how we actually identify these eligible households. So as we were saying before, this campaign is inspired by the work that local authorities do using the data that we analyse on the Low Income Family Tracker platform. So that's LIFT. We might have talked about LIFT if you're not aware of it. It stands for the Low Income Family Tracker, and it takes local authority benefits administration data and runs it through our policy engine to identify those households who might be struggling, who might be impacted by certain policies, or who might be eligible for certain benefits that they are not claiming. So over 60 local authorities across the UK use LIFT to identify households who might be struggling or might be eligible for certain benefits, and to run these really targeted data-led campaigns that, as I'll explain later, have really excellent results when we're looking at the kind of return on investment of writing these letters or running campaigns like this. So I've included 2 pictures on the right-hand side of your screen here. The one on the left shows an example of one of the screens that we have on LIFT from our demo database. and shows all pensioner households within a local authority. And the number's a bit small there, but it's 8,609 pensioner households within that local authority. Obviously, without being able to analyse the data and identify those households who might be eligible, or those who might be eligible and not claiming, that would be kind of your cohort that you might target with support to claim pension credit. And obviously that's a huge number of households when you're thinking about sending out a letter or running an awareness campaign. The actual eligibility within that is going to be quite low, and then the take up from that investment in writing out to all of those households wouldn't be as high as it could be as well. So then with the click of a button on Lift, it will take you to this screen on the right hand side, which directly shows, and each of those little purple dots shows a household. It directly shows those households who are eligible for, and crucially not claiming, pension credit that they're entitled to. And we can go into more detail about what we estimate their eligibility to be. But we can see based on their claim type in the housing benefit and council tax support data that they're eligible and not claiming pension credit. And then, as we see here, it's taken it down from 8,600 households to 750 households who are eligible and not claiming. And sending out a letter to those 750 households is a lot better than sending out a letter to 8,600 households, because we can directly say that they're eligible for and not claiming this benefit. Also, kind of crucially on this, you can then, as we already know who's claiming pension credit, we can then, as Adrian said, track the impact of those campaigns back to those individual households and say how much they're likely to have claimed and whether they've claimed pension credit and any other support. So we also mentioned on the letter that we sent out to households that they could be eligible for attendance allowance as well, which is obviously a lot harder to measure in terms of people's eligibility. But we can signpost them to it, and then when they're speaking to someone about I think I should make a claim for pension credit, if you bring up attendance allowance or other support that you might be eligible for as well, that can further increase the impact of these campaigns. So on the next slide, I've got an example of the letters that we sent out to residents in local authorities. So we identified all of the households eligible for pension credit and not claiming it, and we sent a letter like this one to those households to tell them that they were eligible. So we identified over 8,200 households across London who were eligible for and not claiming pension credit, and we worked with the local authorities to design these letter templates to send out to the residents to encourage them to claim. So we really drew and are really grateful for the local authorities that we work with for that kind of local insight and knowledge of how to help their residents claim and what might be potential barriers to them claiming. And also in some cases, as we'll come on to with Laura at Lambeth, kind of providing that advice capacity and the ability to sometimes reach out to residents where possible to help them with those claims. And the benefit of data as well can help you to identify those households who might struggle to make the claim on their own. If we're looking at potentially the older cohorts, that might be particularly relevant to these kind of campaigns. So kind of using data, but then also bringing in that kind of anecdotal local insight from local authorities kind of brings together and makes it an excellent campaign that can really help to directly influence whether people make a claim for pension credit or not. With that in mind, I think I'm now going to pass over to Laura, who's going to give a bit more insight on what Lambeth did as part of this campaign. We sent their letters, but it goes so much further than that.
Thanks, Abby, and thanks all. I hope you can hear me okay and see me okay. So just wanted to talk you through kind of what we've done in order to be able to increase our uptake in Lambeth for pension credit, and how we've kind of mobilised lots of different teams as part of that, both internally and externally, to get some great results. And thanks to Policy and Practice as well for running this campaign alongside the GLA. So where does this fit in terms of Lambeth? cost of living programme. So in response to the crisis in May, we announced a cost of living response plan 23-24, focusing on the objectives you can see here, responding to urgent need, minimising costs, maximising income and building financial resilience, managing debt. Now, this really obviously fits within our maximising income and is something we feel very passionate about in order to be able to then start to build financial resilience for our residents. So where are we kind of with figures to date? So 349 households have now received pension credit, and that's about 13.2 million going into their pockets and then into the borough in general. You can see here kind of the figures in terms of national cost of living payments we've been able to get as a result, which has been great. And we've had a 40% uptake rate on the campaign, which has been amazing for us. So how have we done this? We've utilised, and I mentioned previously, our partners, both internal and external. We've worked closely with our local Age UK, and we stood up a service for them to be able to receive calls to support taking people through the pension credit process. Now we recognise that it does take a little while to start seeing these results because pension credit backlogs at the moment. However, they were able to kind of be a point for someone to go to if they were concerned about eligibility, had any questions, concerned about kind of the speed of the process as well. We then identified residents that we believed would struggle further to apply for pension credit themselves, and we've got an in-house adult social care welfare rights team within Lambeth who then made calls directly to those residents. That was people we knew were on severe disability premium, for example, or were particularly elderly, and we thought actually they might really struggle to apply. And then finally, we worked with our housing colleagues, both in income and rents, as well as our housing support team, to be able to support any residents that were council tenants with applications as well, as they're going out and doing other checks with them. We've also sent some additional communications on top of the letters that Abby just showed there. So we sent additional letters to eligible residents, and kind of just reminding them, and something that came directly from Lambeth as well. And we've also sent postcards. We recognise that lots of our residents find opening their mail particularly troubling, and particularly those who are kind of concerned about their finances, concerned about bills that might come through the post. So we sent some postcards directly to residents to encourage uptake there. We've put communications on our social media in order to kind of target those to family members. We understand a lot of our pensioners won't be on Twitter, for example, but we do think a lot of family maybe who might be able to then communicate the offer or support their family to apply. And also we included the campaign in all of our kind of physical and digital communications about the cost of living in general, and they can be found kind of across the borough, so within pharmacies, GP surgeries, children's centres, etc. So really just getting it out there to absolutely anyone who might know someone who is eligible. And then kind of looking at the future and where best to take this next. So we are continuing to work with Policy and Practice, and we really want to be involved with kind of the second round of their campaign, along with the GLA. We are also looking at kind of future campaigns that we might be able to roll out. So how we can take the success of this and replicate it in lots of other areas. So free school meal auto awards, increasing healthy start vouchers, and looking at attendance allowance as well for this group. And finally, we're exploring how we can kind of build that sustainable longer term support for residents, working alongside teams in the council to identify residents who actually may be in debt but eligible for pension credit, and how we might be able to then do some targeted support to encourage them to claim, but also work with them more longer term to be able to support them with their finances. And I think that's everything from me. So back to Abby.
4 months, yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Laura. Yeah, it's great to hear, and in my role I get to hear a lot about local authorities who are running different campaigns and the different support that they're offering for residents, but it's great to be able to share that more widely, some of the excellent work that Lambeth have been able to do just off the back of this campaign, and I know there's so much more going on as a part of that in Lambeth. So it's great to hear about kind of the expectation of future campaigns, and it ties in quite nicely to our plan for the future as well with this campaign, and the use of data and similar data, as I was saying before. But before I get into that, I wanted to share the campaign results with everyone. We're really proud of the success of this campaign, and obviously it couldn't have been done without the support of the GLA and all of the local authorities who are involved. So we had 17 local authorities take part in phase 1. As Adrian said before, we're confident that we can get up to around 25 for the second campaign, so reaching even more elderly Londoners. And I'll go on to explain a bit later, but we want to expand these campaigns geographically as well, so going much further to encourage households to take up what they're eligible for. But as I said, we sent nearly 12,000 letters to local authority residents in those 17 local authority areas. So we contacted over 8,200 households eligible for pension credit and not claiming it. So to date, we've had over 2,300 households taking up pension credit, and the average annual impact of those claims is over £3,800 per household in just pension credit. So that's just talking about people's eligibility for pension credit every year. That's not including all of the other past-supported benefits that Adrian was talking about before, so thinking about NHS dental support, prescriptions, council tax support, cost of living payments, and then potential additional things like attendance allowance that people might have claimed from kind of getting in touch with these local support offerings. So the annual value of pension credit claimed across London just in this year is £8.8 million. So as I said, an average of £3.8 thousand per household. Including kind of backdated pension credit that we know a large proportion of households will get their pension credit backdated due to previous entitlements, and including the cost of living payments that were out this year, so the £900 that people were eligible for based on pension credit eligibility and claiming pension credit. That takes the 2023 impact up to over £12.8 million, which is obviously huge just for this year and across these kind of 2,300 households. That can have a huge impact on their finances. But as we said, it can go much further than that as well. That's just the pension credit and kind of immediate benefits that come from that. If we look at the average age of a claimant and the average life expectancy by borough in London, we can kind of estimate a value of the lifetime value of the campaign. So we think this has gone over £100 million now when looking at those values, which we're so proud of, and really think that really excited to do this campaign again and see how much further this can go in terms of supporting residents, because there's still a number of residents who aren't claiming pension credit or have become eligible since this campaign. So yeah, we're really looking forward to running this campaign again and trying to replicate this success and go even further. So in terms of the next steps and what we're looking to do and what we've learned from the last campaign that we did, we know that over £1.7 billion of pension credit is underclaimed every year by over 800,000 households across the country, and this is part of those that £19 billion of benefits and other support that's unclaimed every year nationwide. So we want this to go further. We want to get, as I said, more London local authorities involved in the next campaign, but we're also interested in scaling this across different regions. So running these kind of regional campaigns, learning the lesson from what the GLA and London local authorities have done in partnership with London councils and Age UK London. But we also think this can be replicated across different benefits. So we've seen the local authorities that we work with across the country using their data to target support and identify those households who are eligible for other benefits that they're not claiming. So as Laura mentioned, there's potential to look at things like free school meals and Healthy Start and attendance allowance and other support that can be offered to residents, and doing those uptake campaigns in a similar way. And kind of replicating this benefit across different cohorts, so not just focusing on those who are pension age, but also working age benefits as well. As Adrian mentioned as well, we want to research why people don't take up benefits and other support that they're eligible for. So we I think this campaign has focused on one of the reasons why people don't take up benefits, and particularly in relation to pension credit, we often hear that people aren't aware that they're eligible and people don't know that maybe pension credit exists. So that was one of the things that we wanted to and have, I think, succeeded in tackling to an extent with this campaign. But we know that there's other reasons that people don't claim pension credit or other benefits as well. So we'd like to do some more research into this and look at potentially how we can tackle the stigma around claiming pension credit or certain benefits, as well as things like complexity and not being able to navigate the system. So we're really interested in focusing on that for phase 2, as well as looking at kind of scaling the offer and also looking across other benefits as well. So on to, I think, my last slide. Obviously a big call to action for myself, but also everyone, looking at how we can close this £19 billion unclaimed support gap. So we think that using data to run these targeted take-up campaigns is really successful, but also a way to use resource in the most efficient and effective way. It also helps to, as Laura said, target support to those who need it the most first. So sending letters out to all of those who are eligible, and then as Laura did at Lambeth, focusing some support on those households who may be particularly unable to claim pension credit themselves. So those who are elderly or claiming severe disability premium. And the data can help you to identify those households when you're running those campaigns. We also found and continually find that running these campaigns at a local and regional level really helps to draw on that local insight and experience and makes these campaigns as effective as they can be. So it also allows those partnerships between local partners like our Age UK's and Citizens Advice, and also gives us that local insight that can really help to target the campaign in the best way and offer support to those who need it. And that local insight comes from the officers on the ground who are helping these people on a daily basis to make these claims. As we've kind of mentioned throughout this, and I hope that's something that is taken away, like the impact of running these take-up campaigns goes much further than just the economic impact. So we've focused on things like tackling social isolation, helping with other issues. So those two in particular, tackling social isolation and helping with other issues, getting in contact and having that contact from the local authority or a local partner can really help to encourage a resident to reach out if they have any other problems, so potentially problems with housing and other support that they need within that area. Also in terms of other things like social care costs, when we're thinking specifically about a pension credit campaign and other campaigns as well, there's significant evidence out there that improving income of residents can help to allow them to stay independent for longer and avoid social care costs in the future. So the link between kind of poverty and deprivation and health outcomes is particularly is quite well researched. So we think these campaigns can have an impact on that as well. But as hopefully I've mentioned a few times, this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what local authorities and their partners can do to effectively use benefits administration data to help their residents. So a lot of what we do at local authority level and with our partners, our other local partners, is targeted towards this. And we're more than interested in having a conversation to see how we can support you, to see how we can use data and technology to close this gap of £19 billion, which particularly in the context that we're talking about now is extremely important.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Abby, and thank you to all of our speakers as well. Lots of information given to you there, and indeed I have quite a few questions, so thank you very much for your engagement so far, everybody. So we've now got loads of time for all of the Q&As that have come through, so that's fantastic. So if I could ask Abby to stay on as you are, and also if Adrian and Laura could turn on your cameras, that's amazing. Thank you so much. So we've got some really interesting questions, as I say, and so let me start, if I may, by this question here. So I suppose perhaps to all of you maybe, this person says, it seems a no-brainer. Why have some councils not taken part? Perhaps Adrian, if you want to kick off and answer that one from your point of view.
Yeah, so yes, it probably is. In terms of the results and having the data, and like I said, we're aware, we're not solving the entire problem of unclaimed pension credit here, but like the results really speak for themselves in terms of this cohort and the success rate, and compared to more generalized campaigns, the success rate is really strong. Other boroughs who didn't take part within London within phase one, in fairness, some of them have been doing stuff independently with policy and practice and just independently themselves on pension credit. So I want to give credit to them for doing that. Other boroughs, it might just be a capacity issue or other things. One thing I wanted to make clear, which I didn't say in my presentation, was that you don't have to be a LIFT client to take part, and policy and practice worked with non-LIFT clients as well, so that made things easier. In terms of framing for phase two, like I think, as I said, the results in London speak for themselves, and we've really been trying to present it more as a reason why boroughs wouldn't take part in it rather than why they would, and that has helped get the numbers so high as well. And I think boroughs seeing the results and within London knowing that the vast majority, 2/3, 3/4 of boroughs are going to do this, means that they all do it because they don't want to be seen as kind of falling behind on that. So that's sort of why, some boroughs it just might be a capacity issue, priority, what have you, why they're not doing it. But yeah, definitely agree, it's a very clear route for all boroughs to be doing this, and at the national level as well.
Adrian. Laura, would you have anything to add to that question?
I don't think I've got an awful lot to add, except from the fact that it has been, I agree, it's a no-brainer, and it does feel like it's been really simple. I think it maybe immediately does sound like it might be a bit more of a undertaking than it actually is. So yeah, I think that's potentially why people have not taken it up.
Great stuff. And Abby, anything to add yourself?
Yeah, I think I would just echo completely what Adrian and Laura said there. I think the inspiration for this campaign came from local authorities running similar campaigns using LIFT, using their data to identify households. So there were some local authorities who didn't take part because there was already something underway and now choosing to take part in phase two. So that's really encouraging to see. And I think, yeah, along the same lines, we tried to make it as simple for the local authorities to take part as possible. And any questions and any support that you need, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to have a conversation about it and see what we can do to make it as simple as possible.
Great stuff, Abby. And if I may, Abby, I'm going to stick with you for this next question and then come back the other way to Laura and Adrian to answer as well. And this person has asked, was there a noticeable difference in the take-up of the pension credit across London? The results.
I think there's always likely to be a range of take-up. I think it depends sometimes on the capacity of different local authorities to provide that support to residents. So whether there's the ability to do maybe outbound phone calls, that might have an impact on their ability to take up pension credit, or like some people might be best reached by a letter, some people might be best reached by a phone call, so that can really vary. I think in general though, across local authorities, we saw a couple of local authorities who had no support capacity to do those outbound phone calls and still had take up of over 25% of the cohort that we sent out letters to. So I think there is still real value in sending out these letters and making people aware. Obviously it can vary still depending on the support and depending on kind of the makeup of the local authority. So there's a lot of things that we're hoping to do as a part of phase two to improve take up and maybe looking at more specific things by local authorities, such as some of the barriers obviously might be language barriers, for example. So if there's a way that we can overcome that as well, but that's still kind of in the scoping phase. But yeah, there's obviously a lot of things that might improve take up that we're wanting to study.
Yeah, and indeed, thanks Abby, and indeed that was the case, that 25% in some boroughs, but Laura, your take up was 40%, and that was a lot of what you were telling us, was the difference that you did on top of the campaign in Lambeth. Yeah.
Exactly that. And I would say that actually, even on kind of a very local level, we have seen a difference in take up kind of across the borough as well. So I think some of it is kind of the resource that puts into it, and some of it is actually our next kind of phase is going to be looking at how we can get out and meet face to face with some of these people, which I think will make a lot of difference as well.
Great stuff. Adrian, anything to add on that in terms of the differences across the London, across the boroughs?
Not too much. I mean, we're working across 17 boroughs, and as Abby said, with different inputs from boroughs and different approaches, and London is obviously very varied with different communities and so many factors at play. I think phase 2 with longer to plan and different approaches, we'll be able to go a bit deeper, as Abby was saying, in terms of messaging, in terms of understanding what boroughs are doing. Like I said in my presentation, maybe learning from best practice and comparing things between what boroughs are doing, to just make it like more interesting, and like to have that depth of understanding of what really makes a difference with these kind of campaigns.
Great stuff. Lovely, thank you. Laura, if I could come back to you, if I may, and I suppose it's just this point, and I think Abby, you touched on it as well. But Laura, how did you, and indeed how might you next target perhaps hard to reach groups? So maybe people for whom English isn't their first language, or people who might be mental health service users. How are you reaching out to those groups?
So it was really a mix of enabling kind of the teams that are already working with those people, so making them aware that actually we think there's someone eligible for pension credit, and getting them to kind of work with them and supporting them with doing that. But also we used, I think I mentioned previously, we used it particularly in terms of kind of mental and physical health. We use the severe disability premium as kind of an indicator of that, to be able to target. And we also have we work really closely with translation services. So where we were calling people and we needed things to be translated, we were able to do that quite easily.
Thank you. I've got some more questions here. So question to the panel. This person says, the benefits are clearly huge, but what are the financial costs to local authorities for sending letters, etc.? Adrian, do you want to take that one first off?
I might not be as well placed as Laura, perhaps, or Abby, to say how much it costs to do it in-house or with policy and practice. Sorry, because we're a bit further along.
But I suppose the point I was making is that, and you said it at the very beginning, Adrian, is that this is something that was funded by the Greater London Authority on behalf of local authorities for this campaign. Abby, do you have any insights or anything that you might say in terms of the financial cost to local authorities, and then perhaps yourself, Laura?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, for this campaign, exactly as you said, it was funded by the Greater London Authority, and that allowed us to send out as many letters as we did, and make sure that everybody that we identified could get 2 letters to kind of remind them of their entitlement if they hadn't already claimed. And yeah, so for this kind of campaign, the only support we needed from the local authorities was getting the data, and then we kind of take that over the line and run that through kind of the policy engine and identify those who are eligible. So campaigns like this can take some of the burden off of local authorities in terms of some of that cost, and also the resource needed to, I guess, identify those households and put together the mailing list and send out the letters. So the aim of these campaigns, and obviously the aim of phase 2, is building up the capacity for local authorities to run these kind of campaigns more regularly and reach out to different groups of households. So that's a lot of the work that we're doing, on top of obviously improving the take-up of pension credit. As Adrian was saying before, is also about improving the capacity to do this from a local authority level across London, across different local authorities as well, to improve the take-up of all benefits where we can.
Brilliant, thanks, Abby. Laura, anything to add on that point about the financial cost to local authorities?
Just really add, because the main part of this campaign, aside from kind of the work we've done with GLA and policy and practice, the main part for us was equipping the teams that already exists. There hasn't been a huge additional cost to us. The only cost really was in communications, but in the scheme of the money that's being brought into people's pockets, it's been really minor.
Thanks, Laura. Abby, if I can come back to you, if I may, just on this point. I've had a couple of questions here around data. So are there any data sharing issues for charities like Citizens Advice, local offices who want to run campaigns?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of was something I was actually going to touch on a previous question, but across the local authorities that we work with on Lift, many of them are partnering with different organisations that they work with, whether that's kind of internal teams, like Laura was saying, across different maybe adult social care or housing, or other teams like that, maybe public health in certain situations as well. There's also a lot of local authorities who are partnering with their citizens advice teams, their external housing association organisations, and we've had a number of local authorities put in data sharing agreements across those partners to be able to work with them, whether that be in terms of providing that advice capacity that a local authority might not have internally, and also about kind of having that knowledge even across different organisations, that we're about to send out these letters, and is it okay if we put your number on there for people to call if they have any questions, and that kind of partnership. But I know there's also a number of local authorities who are working closer with those partners to be able to run these campaigns kind of in tandem together, and supporting residents in the best way they can.
Brilliant, thanks, Abby. I'd also just touches on a question that's just come in here about the resourcing issue, and can community groups support this campaign? And you talked about a way there. So, for example, could some of the responsibilities be delivered by the VCS, and would this be funded? So, Abby, if you just want to, I'm not sure we've talked about it too much at all, but if you want to just talk about Age UK London and how they were involved in the campaign, just very briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. So a number of the local authorities that we work with their local Age UKs. We're also talking to the team at Age UK London about the ways that they supported this campaign, and the ways that we can improve the capacity to support the next campaign. So having kind of the Age UK London logo on the letters, for example, kind of adds that extra support and extra, I guess, like validity to those campaigns, and having those kind of external kind of partners that can be drawn on for help with advice and support, those kind of trusted partners, as well as the local authority, can really help to encourage people to get in touch with someone, whether it be about pension credit or something else. That kind of contact can be really useful, and yeah, we're really grateful to be able to partner with Age UK London and with Independent Age as well, to kind of run these campaigns with that kind of extra support that they can offer, and the extra knowledge that obviously they have within this area of helping older Londoners to claim the benefits they're eligible for.
Brilliant, thanks, Abby. And Laura, did you find that inclusion, that partnership with your local Age UK branch got over this kind of trust point, I suppose, that Abby mentioned there?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, our local Age UK works very closely with people who may have kind of mental health issues or other concerns that we think would make them more vulnerable, and therefore less likely to apply themselves for pension credit. So actually working closely with them and both help the trust, but also increase kind of take up from this group.
Brilliant, lovely, thank you, great advice. Adrian, if I could come back to you, if I may, what advice would you give to perhaps other city regions who are learning, perhaps just for the first time, the amount of unclaimed benefits in their areas? What would you give to other city regions? What advice would you give to them?
Well, I think working in London, we were lucky to be working with so many boroughs who were already signed up to Lift. So and with policy and practice, particularly in phase one, managing that service. So understanding what boroughs are using and what partners are out there and what opportunities there might be. Obviously, this is a case in point of that. Understanding from the regional perspective, like what boroughs are interested in, what is happening maybe at a smaller level. So I said in my presentation, Islington had that history of doing something, and so we're looking, in the nature of the GLA, to always be able to scale things up to a London level, or almost to a London level. So looking and understanding what is out there. I think what was important, thinking way back about 12 months to the information session that we had with boroughs, was that boroughs trust one another and understanding how these things work. And we had Islington there. It's obviously great Laura's here today from Lambeth. So boroughs talking to boroughs about how it worked actually, and with policy and practice as well about that process, and really understanding in many ways with this campaign how little work there was, but what the results could be. That was really important as well. So those are some things to just think about if you're thinking about like at that regional or even sub-regional multi-borough level.
Brilliant, that's great advice. Thank you very much, Adrian. Just going back to a data question, Abby, if I could just throw this one to you, if I may. This person is asking, how easy or not has it been to get DWP/HMRC permission to use their data with Lift? That was the question that came in. So if you want to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we work closely with the DWP and HMRC to kind of inform them of the work that local authorities are doing, and we work with local authorities to get all the data governance signed off from those kind of standpoints. So we send off DWP reuse request forms, and DWP have clarified around data governance where local authorities are data controllers. So that's been really helpful in that capacity as well. We're also having conversations with HMRC around the use of data as well, but yeah, we work with all the local authorities that use Lift, and the local authorities who are involved in campaigns as well, to get the data governance signed off and ensure that everything is kind of compliant as well. So yeah, we kind of offer that support in the onboarding process for Lift and for individual projects as well.
Thank you. Thanks ever so much, Abby. One person here, and Laura, if I could come to you on this one. This person is asking, in Lambeth, does the letter get sent out with anything else, or is it just a letter? A very specific question.
So we've been sending out just the letter from kind of the GLA policy and practice side. When we've been sending things out, we've been sending our kind of cost of living literature in general, and so people are aware of everything they might be entitled to.
Lovely, thank you. And Laura, if I could stick with you as well, and probably we could use this as the last question actually. Well, actually, I've got two last questions for you, Laura. So first up, what advice would you give to other local authorities who are considering a benefit take-up campaign? So we've talked a lot about pension credits today, but just in general, if you've got any advice about other local authorities wanting to do benefit take-up campaign, what advice would you?
I guess kind of everything that we've covered today, the main advice that I would give is being able to kind of identify the groups that it either is really going to make a difference to because of other kind of factors, or being able to identify those who you think might need a bit more support with it, and being able to really give that support in order to encourage uptake is probably key. But also very happy to kind of, if anyone wants to kind of have a conversation about how that might work for their local authority, I'm very happy to share my contact details as well.
That's great, thank you very much for that. And then if I may, just as an aside, because we have other organisations, not just local authorities on the call, but this person has asked, what advice would you give to third parties who want their local authority to start using Lift and perhaps aren't already? What advice would you give to those third parties, just from an insider local authority point of view?
Unofficially, I would nag them and continue to nag them about it. But I guess there is also something around really sharing the benefits. One thing that's been really helpful for us is it's so tangible to see how much money is going into kind of people's pockets and how much money therefore is going into kind of the borough. And I think that is a key thing to get over there, that actually this would join those dots and support the local authority as well.
Great advice, lovely. Thanks ever so much, Laura, and thank you everybody. That's all of the questions. Thank you everybody for all of the questions and for your engagement. It's been fantastic. And just while we come to a lovely end to our webinar, thank you for the brilliant comments from people saying how much they've enjoyed the webinar. If I could just give a shout out, as I say, to some next steps. So I mentioned at the beginning that we've got a short survey. When I close the webinar, there'll be a short survey. We'd love your feedback. And also in that survey as well is the opportunity to sign up to our next webinar, which is coming at the end of October. And this time we're going to be talking about how water companies are closing the unclaimed support gap. We're covering every sector, aren't we? So yeah, so do take that opportunity to give us some feedback, please, and also sign up to the webinar as well. But that just leaves me with the very happy to have to say a huge, massive thank you to our speakers today, to my colleague Abigail Everett from Policy and Practice, to Adrian McDowell from the Greater London Authority, and also Laura Stoker from Lambeth Council. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thanks to our speakers, and thanks to you at home for joining us today. Hope to see you on another webinar soon. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, Janet. Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.